So, welcome to this week's episode of the Lovefly podcast. And today we're joined by Gillian. Hello, Gillian. Welcome.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
So, Gillian I've read a little bit about your story from the notes you sent us. I think there's going to be some really great tips in today's episode. As we always hope to deliver on every single one, but there's some really nice little nuggets in yours I noticed. So we'll see if those come out. So, Gillian, tell us a bit about yourself, where you live, and anything you want us to know.
Thanks, Paul. So I am a mother of three, and I live in Scotland. But I have lived in Africa. I have been all over the world, and I stopped flying 21 years ago.
Okay. That's a nice sum up, isn't it? That's a great reading, isn't it? Oh, right. Okay. So you were traveling loads, and did you say you lived in Africa?
I did, yeah. I lived in Ghana when I was a child.
Right. Okay. And then, so would you tell us what happened then? Before you do that, were you all okay with flying before you stopped?
Yep. I flew unaccompanied as a child from Ghana to the UK through Amsterdam. I flew quite a lot. Been to the Caribbean. I've been all over Europe. So yeah, I've flown a lot in my life from a young age. However, since I've ever been on a plane, I flew with my mum. And my mum and dad met at Luton Airport. And my dad was a customs officer and my mum was an air hostess. And
how cute is that?
No. And she stopped being an air hostess because her flight and her birds crash landed at the airport. And she then became terrified of flying. So my whole experience of ever being on a plane was with my caregiver being very, very frightened of flying. She's also deeply religious. So we would get on flights and she would mark the flight with the cross and things, really that we were going to our deaths. So there wasn't, and every flight that I went on with her, she was medicated. She would have to have, some alcohol and some Valium for the flight. Yeah. And yeah.
I understand. So Gillian, this flight that triggered. So she flew. Who did she fly for? Are you allowed to say which airline she flew for?
Do you know what? So we're talking the 60s here, the 1960s. So I have no idea who she flew for. I could find out, but I've got no idea who she flew for. They probably don't exist anymore. Right. And I know where you're going with what you're about to ask me. What actually happened? So she never ever really explained it. And anytime she did explain it, it was in very catastrophic terms of people screaming and lots of scary things happening. And just before I took my flight 2 weeks ago, I said to my husband about it, he's very matter of fact. And he said, you know what, so what happened? Tell me what happened. What does she tell you happened? I said, well, she said that the plane crashed, it landed, and the nose gear didn't come down fully, so it came down on the nose and they skidded along the wrong way, and they had to eject the slides out, and everybody was screaming, and some woman was screaming hysterical in her face, and she had to tell her to calm down, and da-da-da-da-da. And my husband went, so she never crashed? And I said, what? And he went, well, she never crashed. He said she had a controlled landing. He said, and everybody survived, and everybody was okay in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And you're now well on from that, and technology's improved and learning has improved. He said, and your mum never died. She's here to tell the tale. Yes, it might have been a bit frightening. He went, but it's no more frightening than when we bump the car, or if something happens, everybody's okay, and these things can happen. And, it really for a moment went, do you know, you're right. But as a child, all I hear is, this is dangerous, this is scary, this is, and that feeds into your kind of childlike brain. So that was her experience. So her plane never crashed. She had a controlled landing. The pilot of that plane is probably just an amazing, amazing guy that's managed to bring that down and get everybody safely off the plane for a technical fault that happened in the 1960s. But she's, allowed that to rule the rest of her experience of flying, sadly.
Wow, thank you for that. So let's just unpick that, because that's a great example. Your partner is going to be a future speaker on our courses. That's exactly what I was thinking as you said it. I was thinking, well, that sounds like it. So let's think back to the 60s. Okay, this is before a lot of the technology. So we're talking like 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously people flew then, and it was considered safe. But compared to now, it's a completely different world. The other thing is they didn't have human factors training. They wouldn't have had debriefs for the cabin crew. And so so that could have been dealt with at the time. But it was all very new, all of that sort of thinking about, like not long from the war. A lot of people still had that stiff upper lip crap going on, and all that. So your poor mum, he had all of that stuff to deal with, but not really any proper support to let it to naturally kind of rationalize it, God.
Which is sad for her.
It
And
is,
and that fear kind of travelled with her. And then so my time flying was experiencing that every plane that I got on, potentially I was going to my death, right from a very young age. But it never really impacted me at a young age because I didn't feel frightened. I didn't feel frightened of flying. I could see she was frightened, but I could just rationalise that she was frightened. It didn't, as a child, it didn't feel frightening to me. I would get on and fall asleep while she was sitting there waiting to die, and I would just go to sleep and wake up and we'd be nearly there.
That's just the way you said that. I'd fall asleep while she was sitting there waiting to die. I love that.
But I think that's how irrational it is, that one person can be sleeping and another person's waiting to die, and that's how irrational that fear is. So that was all I ever knew. Then
so just pause for a second, Gillian. I mean, that's a lot that you were having all these sort of messages of somebody, because we look to our parents for certainty, don't we? So
exactly.
Until that point, you were just thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But obviously, at some level, it must have been sort of going into your subconscious, I would imagine.
For definite. I mean, we got off one flight in Accra in Ghana, and there happened to be somebody quite high up in the Scouts, I think it was. And so the Scouts in Ghana came along, but they were all dressed in white, singing in a choir. And the airport in Accra was open, so you could come out onto it was almost like a sort of square C shape. So you could come right out almost to the runway, but high up, and look down as the planes were coming in to land. And so our plane came in, and there must have been about 100 people all dressed in white, singing beautiful gospel songs as we come off this flight with my deeply religious, terrified mother, who was certain that the plane had crashed. We hadn't survived, and this was us arriving in heaven. And she would talk about that regularly, that she thought she'd died and this was it and we'd arrived in heaven. I mean, it was a kind of heaven, but that really wasn't what happened. So there's a lot of kind of stuff.
Sorry to laugh, but that is class.
That's the level of fear, though, that she had, that she genuinely thought she'd died. She genuinely thought it had happened. So, yeah, I had learned, I had that fear sort of as my base for flying. So then, fast forward.
My goodness, what all that stuff's going through her head. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Bless her. So fast forward, kind of, I then became a young adult and was flying, was still trying to fly. I flew to the Caribbean when I was 18 with a friend and her family, and spent the whole. At that point, you could still smoke. It was a Monarch flight, and you could still smoke in parts of the plane. And we flew to the Caribbean, and we had to stop off in Maine to refuel. So I spent the whole 6 hours to Maine, and then the further 3 hours to the Caribbean, absolutely terrified, like clinging on and really, really scared. And when we were coming back, and I'm just telling this story for everybody to recognise the power of your mind and what you tell yourself. And on the way back, my friend's mum said, listen, I don't want you to go through that again on the way back. So I'm going to speak to the local doctor here that's in the hotel, and I'm going to see if we can get you something to support you through the flight. So she went away and she came back and she said, he's given me a tablet. He said, it's going to calm you down. Take half now and take the other half when we get to Maine on the way back. So she gave me this half a tablet and we were straight in, straight on, took off, landed in Maine. She gave me the other half of the tablet. So for the remainder of the journey, I was up, I was walking about. At this point, you could still get into the cockpit. They had me up in the cockpit talking to the pilots. We, by this point, knew quite a few people on the plane because it was a kind of all-inclusive holiday, so everybody was in the same hotel. So they were all like, how are you? You feeling all right? And I'm saying, I'm feeling great. They got me this tablet. I feel wonderful. Everything. I'm so relaxed. I wish I'd done this before. We land. Everybody goes home. About a week later, because again, this is this long ago, your photographs got developed and you had to go and collect them. So they picked up the photographs and said, come down for dinner and we'll look at the photographs. So we go down, we're looking at the photographs, talking away about it, and they went, oh, we've got something to tell you. Remember that tablet we got you to fly with? I said, and they went, yeah, that was a paracetamol, and the whole plane knew you just had a paracetamol.
Wow.
So I went from being absolutely terrified to thinking I was fine because I'd been given a placebo.
Oh my goodness. That is brilliant, isn't it? I guess the paracetamol trick never worked again, but that was... It just goes to show how powerful it is.
Your mind.
That's a really great... Wow.
Yeah, it is the power of your mind. What it didn't give me was confidence.
Yeah.
I just believed that something else was giving me, was relaxing at that point. So it didn't still give me confidence. Then, sadly, 9/11 happened. And that then very quickly became the time when I stopped wanting to fly.
Just rewind a little bit, Gillian. What made that flight particularly be where you were nervous? Because I can get a sense up until then you've been all right. But what happened on that one?
On the one to the Caribbean and back? Nothing. I have never had a bad flight. I've never had a bad flight. I don't even think I've had a bad flight.
You just decided that was the one you're going to be scared of?
No, I had already started just to develop a fear of flying. Just when I got on planes, I was just, I think I'd been taught that that's how you get on planes. You get on planes scared. They are just scary. Some bad things can happen. I lived through a lot of horrible plane crashes like Lockerbie and things like that. So bad things happen on planes. My mum has taught me, she's experienced it, they crash, like it's not safe. So I think I just had this kind of baseline that was like, this is not safe. I've been taught this is not safe and this is not safe.
Yeah.
So as I got older and started to become an adult, I just developed that fear. I was speaking to my stepdaughter, again, just before I took this flight, about what life was like when I stopped flying 21 years ago. There was no mobile phones. There was no social media. The only way to really learn about flying would be to find somebody that was a pilot or to read a book about it. And a lot of it was ways that my brain doesn't learn. Physics is not something that comes naturally to me, never has done. Anything kind of scientific, that's my husband. I am very much more of a creative brain, so I'm very good at creating the scenarios of impending death. Yes. I'm not very good at understanding that that's not the case. So there was never the ability to easily learn this stuff in bite-sized information or sit and listen to it in an audio way. So this is where Lovefly came in for me, because I could sit and I listened to your book, and I listened to other people's. There wasn't even that community, that online peer community where you could find other people who had a similar fear to you. So really, either you could do it or you couldn't. There was no way of teaching yourself anything different. And then 9/11 happened, and that sort of cemented to me that flying was pretty bad. I continued to fly maybe a year or two after 9/11. I think 2004 might have been, 2003, 2004 might have been my last flight. My parents were living in Romania. We flew to there. And then on a flight back from Corfu into Glasgow, into a very windy Glasgow, we flew in and the plane was kind of rocking about a bit in the wind, and we were up the front, and I heard this noise, and it was like, whoop, 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 whoop. And I thought, oh, that's it. This is crashing. That's that noise. That's the noise that you hear in all these like air accident investigation things. That's it. We nearly crashed there. Done. Never doing this again. To the point that I got a train to Romania through Europe because I refused. I refused from that point on to get on a flight again. Since I've started to learn about flying, I now know that noise was them turning the autopilot off. That was a moment for me. I was like, 21 years, I thought I was going to die. And actually, they were just turning the autopilot off.
Yeah.
So that was a moment. That was a moment as well where I kind of had to look at myself and say, yeah, you need to learn more about, you need to learn more about everything.
Okay. So you start, that your flight there, that was that for you. But then,
yeah.
What's been the impact of not flying for all these years?
So I think, there's a little bit more to my story that that I think is quite significant in that. So how do I explain this? So in 2004, I stopped flying. In 2006, I experienced my first panic attack when I was on a train going to London. And that actually started a panic disorder that eventually developed into quite a serious, which eventually developed into very serious agoraphobia, to the point that I couldn't leave the house. The clouds in the sky would trigger a panic attack. So I became housebound in around about 2011. I lost my job. I became reliant on food banks. Not that you really had much of that. I had a lot of friends kind of helping me out. You know, I was defaulted on all the things that I owed money on. My life became, up until that point, I had a degree, I had a successful career, and my life stopped at that point. I then met my now husband a couple of years later, and he had two children that came along in the package who were 6 and 8 at that point. And there had been quite a dark period, and even when I met him, I couldn't probably leave my hometown by that point.
I was going to ask, how did you meet? Were you
online?
So you couldn't go out. How did you do that then?
Yeah, and he invited me on a date, and I kind of made this whole thing about, I don't have a job at the moment, and I've not got much money, so why don't you just come to mine for a coffee? And then he came over, and I sort of said, cards on the table, I can't actually go anywhere. And he was like, that's okay. I don't really want to go anywhere anyway, so we'll just watch movies and we'll just, it'll all be fine eventually. Yeah, and that was the kind of turning point, because these two children came along, two children that wanted to do things like go swimming, go places. So I then started a kind of journey of trying to unwind from it. And eventually in 2016, I fell pregnant with my daughter. And I was still very, very, very badly agoraphobic, to the point that I had to walk to the hospital and back to try and get scans and things done. So it was, and when I gave birth to her in the hospital, I couldn't look out the windows. I couldn't, it was bad. But when she came along, with her came even more of a need to recover. So from 2017 until you find me now, I've been doing that work. And that work at first was painfully slow. Like I couldn't I couldn't even go into Glasgow from where I live, which is only about half an hour away. But I then started to learn about coping with anxious feelings. So coping with anxiety, coping with things that are overwhelming. I changed jobs in 2021 and I was dyslexic. I knew I was dyslexic and I work now in a government role, and I have my career back, I have my life back, and but as part of that they said, oh, you're coming over to us, you're dyslexic, let's get you a quick assessment so you get everything you need in work. And they assessed me and they said, oh, you're obviously very, very anxious, let's have a look at that. And they then, fast forward, work psychologist then said, actually, I think that you might be neurodiverse. You might be living with ADHD and a level of autism, which is creating this level of anxiety. And that, I think, was the moment where I actually could say, oh yeah, this is why the world feels scary to me, because there's a lot of things going on within that are very stimulating and very difficult. So things then started to open up in my life, and but still the furthest I've been is only Blackpool in 21 years. So why flying, and why does that bring us to getting back on a plane when I've only been to Blackpool?
So this is, I feel very honoured that you're sharing this, because you're talking to me. We've only just met, and then other people will listen that you'll never meet, and I think this has been fantastic. It's really, really, really brave, and that's not patronising, but it's just, I love that. Really gutsy to do this. I'm really curious what you think made, because you stopped flying, and then what triggered the panic attack back in 2006 on the train?
So yeah, it was just after the London bombings.
Right, okay.
So I think we had kind of 9/11 and then the London bombings, and I was on a train going to London, and I think I just panicked. I actually, when I look back on it though, can remember that the sun was quite low in the sky and the train was moving and the light was flashing on my eyes. And now, knowing what I know about being overstimulated because of sensory input, it was that caused me to panic, because there was too much. The train was moving, the light was flashing, and it was the sensory input caused the panic attack. I believe that now, looking at it, although I don't think going to London a couple of weeks after the bombings I was probably a bit anxious about that as well, but it came out of nowhere, and I think that was what terrified me the most, was it just happened. And that's what kept me stuck for a very long time, was that I couldn't understand why I'd had this reaction. But I believe now that it was just an overload of my senses. Okay. And in fact, I know that to be true, because now I can recognise when those things are happening, and I can put things in place that help me to feel less overloaded. And I can talk about that in terms of my experience of how that got me on a plane, if that would be of interest to anybody.
Well, yeah, it would, definitely. So this is really fascinating for me, because I'm thinking what you've had to overcome, not just the fear of flying, but not being able to go out. I mean, just, yeah. And then, so keep going. So come back to that. I just wanted to know if you knew what had triggered it, because it was interesting that it was triggered on a train, and then I was like, why would that be? But
I spent, let me tell you, I spent many, many, many years trying to figure out what triggered it. I was down that whole rabbit hole of counselling and trauma and PTSD, and was it this that happened? Was it that happened? And so eventually I realised that it doesn't really matter what caused it. It's how you then deal with it. It's how you then learn to cope with high emotion is all that matters, because everybody that, and we'll relate this back to fear of flying, everybody that has a fear of flying, ultimately at the base of that fear is their ability to control their emotions in that situation. Their fear ultimately, and why people get off planes, why they book flights, they sit down and then they can't cope with it, is they can't cope with the level of emotion that's bringing up inside of them. Their ultimate fear is that they're going to panic and an enclosed space that they can't easily escape from.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that is fueling that fear, be it the pilot isn't competent, the plane is not being repaired properly, it's going to fall out the sky, Russians or people are going to bomb us, what is it today in the group chat? The effects of the Northern Lights on, everything that's at the root of that is their fear that they won't be able to cope. And I had to learn from much further back than a lot of people in the Lovefly group are in. I had to learn that anxiety, like happiness and laughter, is an emotion that you can't ever get rid of, that will appear because it's an emotion, it's a part of the human existence. And it will appear for everybody in the world. Even the calmest people, even the most chill people will have anxiety because we can't not have it. It's part of our brain. And the key is to understand that it can't harm you, no matter how bad and how overwhelming the feelings of fear are, and no matter what the symptoms they bring, be it hyperventilating, crying, whatever. One, you won't lose control, and two, it will pass. They're like waves on a beach. They'll come in, they'll feel a bit intense, they'll go away again. You won't spend 8 hours on a plane feeling the same level of fear. You will have, it will calm down and it will go back up again. And I would say to anybody that's scared of flying that that's the thing that they need to address, is their ability to manage anxious feelings and to recognise that those anxious feelings, although they are telling you you're in danger, doesn't mean that you are in danger. And you kind of need to speak to that part of your mind. And you probably know all about this, Paul, about, that part of your mind is very primitive. It's a very kind of, it's a part of your brain that hasn't developed since humans were evolving. It can't see, it can't hear, it can't smell, it can't do anything. All it does is it takes its cues from how your body is. So if your body is tense and signalling that it's fearful, then your brain will automatically say, there is danger here, I can't let you go into this danger. So, if you touch a flame on a candle and you realise, ow, that hurts, that part of your brain will never, ever, ever let you put your finger on a flame of a candle again. And if you want to try out that theory, light a candle and try and put your finger on it. And your brain will not let you burn your finger. But it will do the same for you getting on a plane, because the plane is the candle. You have told it is dangerous. And unless you untell it, and that is as simple as saying, thanks very much, this might feel difficult, but it's not dangerous. And I had to spend the whole night before my flight telling myself that this is difficult, but it's not dangerous.
All right, okay. So you hadn't gone further than Blackpool, and we just jumped. I mean, I loved all that little wisdom. That was brilliant. But so then talk us through, what the stage is, how you found us, what you've done, the flight. What made you...
Yeah. So I live in Glasgow. It rains a lot. It has rained non-stop, I think, since last year. And eventually I thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't go on holiday in the UK, and I just need a break. I need an actual holiday. And my child is constantly saying, I want to go to Disneyland, Mum. I want to go to Disneyland Paris, Mum. All my friends are going to Disneyland Paris, Mum. And so I think, well, we could maybe go by train. So I eventually got a passport. Yeah, and I didn't even have a passport. Just didn't need one because I was never, ever, ever getting on a plane again. So there was no need for a passport. So last year I thought, do you know what? Let's get rid of that excuse. Let's just get the passports. Then at least at some point we have the option to go somewhere. So that was the first kind of part where I opened myself up to considering that things could be different. Got the passport. Then I have a friend in work who is also scared of flying, but doesn't let it stop her. So she's done a few trips and she takes videos and she sent me videos and things. And again, I just kind of was like, oh, that's nice, she's doing it. I'm never doing it. But that's nice, she's doing it. I'll never do it. And then we got to kind of February of this year and I thought, where are we going on holiday? Another holiday in the UK. Okay. And I booked a holiday in the UK. And then we got to Easter and it chucked it down. And I thought, I just can't do this anymore. So I started to look at fear of flying courses and I seen that there was one on the 21st of April in Glasgow. So for me, as somebody who I now recognise I'm neurodiverse, even the airport, even getting to the airport and what the airport would look like and that whole experience, that for me was a block before I even thought about getting on a plane. Yeah. So there's a wonderful thing in the UK for people that are scared of flying or people that have got additional needs. I don't believe you need to have additional needs, but if you're scared of flying, if you've got a fear of flying, call your local airport, ask to be put through to passenger assistance, and they will take you on a tour of your airport. And it's amazing. I went myself, even just getting there and parking, I thought, I don't know where to go. The last time I was at the airport was before Glasgow Airport was bombed, when they tried to drive the cars into the airport. I hadn't been there since then. And so even just knowing, because the layout's changed so that you can't ever do that again, so they've changed all how you get into the airport, where you park. So even doing that for me was very overwhelming. So, and the night before I was just anxious about where am I going to park. So I went and managed to park and went for this tour of the airport. And it was just me and this really nice guy called Jim. And he took me around the whole airport. He showed me everything. He showed me where I would queue. He took me through security, which security is overwhelming. That itself is that is so overwhelming. So just that experience alone and being able to do that before even considering getting on a plane, it just took away a huge amount of worry for me because I had done that bit of it. And we had a really, he worked there for 35 years, hadn't seen any real incidents in the sky, had seen them on the ground with people trying to bomb the airport and things, but had never really seen anything of any great significance happen in the sky around Glasgow Airport. And one of the things that I loved that he told me that really blew my mind, because again, hadn't been through security, so this whole 100 mils of liquid thing, I was like, what, why? And I said, Jim, explain to me this. There's a Marks and Spencer's here on the land side. If I was to buy a bottle of water and not open it and take it through security and go to the other side of the airport, why can't I do that? Why can't I just take this bottle of water unopened, buy it here in the airport, and then go through security with this bottle of water, when I can buy the exact same bottle of water when I'm through security in the Marks and Spencer's on the air side of the airport? And this blew my mind. He said to me, every single thing, every bottle of water, every croissant, every pint of beer, every bit of suntan lotion, every single thing that you see on the air side before you get on the plane, he said, you see that huge hanger over there? I said, and he said, there is, all that's in there are security scanners, and they scan every single item, every perfume, every bottle of vodka, everything that goes into that side of the airport gets scanned and goes through security. He said, and that is why you can only buy it on the air side. And I, at that moment, thought, these people really, really take this seriously. And he said, that's why it's also so expensive at the other side. He said, because they have to do this level of stuff and the staff have to go through this level of kind of clearance to even work in Costa and the air side of the airport. It's like they really take it seriously. So just that alone, just knowing that, this is the level of thought that goes into that bottle of water that's in Marks and Spencer's in Glasgow Airport in the air side.
I love that. Even the croissants.
Everything's security cleared.
Yeah, those dangerous croissants. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like then, I mean, that sounds brilliant. And I love the plug for that. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It sounds also like your diagnosis of finding that you neurodivergent was actually quite a helpful thing. Sounds like it's kind of gave you freedom rather than limiting you. It's made you think, okay, I know what I've got to do then.
Yeah, because there's things that I find difficult, but there's a lot of people that find those things difficult, and so the world has started to put in place support. So I don't now need to stand in a big long queue in security. I can go through a priority lane and get through that way, and that takes away a lot of that kind of just standing about and feeling overstimulated with a lot of people and things like that going on. So yeah, there's that was massively helpful. And when I have booked another flight and I have asked for assistance for that flight, I'm going to take my daughter, who is the most precious thing in the world to me, is the most wonderful gift. So if I'm willing to take her on a flight, then I must truly believe that I'm not taking her to impending death.
So that's got planning. So tell us about what you've done with your fear of flying. I'll bet. Look, have you done a flight? You're gonna do a flight?
I've done a flight.
All right.
So I've flown. So I did the tour of the airport, and that alone lifted a lot of the kind of worry for me, because I just seen that these are just normal people going to their work, but they take their job seriously. I then focused on the things that really scared me about flying, and the things that scared me the most about flying were being in the air, and that's what then brought me to Lovefly, because I started to look for more information about physics and what keeps a plane in the air, and trying to understand all of that. Because for me, I didn't understand that the air around me right now, which feels like nothing, becomes an actual solid in the sky. And so I did what neurodivergent people call hyperfixate, and I hyperfixated and really kind of learned so much, probably to the point that I could have flown the plane when I got on it. But I learned a lot, and one of the things that came from Lovefly was, I want to say, is it a chap called Jamie who takes videos of, there's ones, and he's like in Salzburg. I watched those videos to death. Like, those videos were just so great for desensitizing me and helping me to understand all the noises and everything that goes on within that, and just hearing, he's got such a lovely calm voice. He just talks about the stages of the flight, and the 15,000 feet noise abatement, that was those were always the moments where I thought this was it. It was game over. The plane was falling out the sky, and I never been able to learn that actually this is totally normal. This noise is normal. This sensation's normal. This is all fine. What else? Social media. I was on lots of kind of TikToks and Instagram posts, and seeing people talk about the jelly scenario. They put a pea in a pot of jelly, and they're saying this is what your plane is like. This wasn't available to me 21 years ago, but now I'm sitting learning, thinking, I can learn about lift. I watched some amazing videos on lift and learning about it that were made for children. That were made for children's brains to understand, which I probably have that kind of brain when it comes to science. So it was great for me, because I just could really understand what's keeping this plane in the air. And then I started to think about, I've seen videos of people going to these indoor, like, skydiving things where they basically just drop themselves onto a big fan. And I'm thinking, air actually can hold you up in the air. And it can hold human beings on top of a fan. So if it can hold a human being on top of a fan, then of course it can hold a plane in the sky. So then when I got on my flight, I now see that fan that's holding the people up. That now comes up from the ground and holds my wings up. So in my head now, I see that push of air holding it up. And so that that I have got a bit of quite a fear of heights, and that for me was that. So I heard this guy Jamie saying it about it as well. You know, he talks about he puts big sticks under it, and it's basically like sticks. Yeah. So for me, it was the same thing. It was just the knowing what's keeping it there. I never know. I never know.
So what was your process to get you on? But it sounds like you've done tons. I mean, but
so I did
break it down into some sort of like steps for people. You took a flight. We don't know where you went yet.
So I did about 2 weeks of just searching social media. I listened to your podcast. I joined the Facebook group. I listened to the book. I had listened to that about a year ago, I have to say, and I recommended it to other people that were scared of flying. I didn't do it myself. And then, so I listened to that again. I listened to quite a few of the podcasts. Sorry, I can't remember the numbers, but people in the Facebook group were brilliant at kind of saying, "Oh, I'm listening to this one," and so I would go away and listen to them when I was driving, things like that. I listened to the calming one the night before my flight. So I did a lot of stuff. I knew that this date of the 21st of April was looming, but I never booked the Fear of Flying course because it was going to be £300 for me to go with a companion. It was a lot of money. I genuinely didn't think I was getting on the plane, to be honest with you. I was doing a lot of learning, but I still hadn't convinced myself I was getting on the flight. I eventually got to the flight was on the Sunday, and I eventually got to the Tuesday. And I had this fear of missing out. I thought, oh, what if it sells out? And then I've not done it, and then I'm going to have to wait a long time to do it again. And so I kind of chatted it through with my husband. I said, it's a lot of money. And he said, well, it is a lot of money, but you need to take the pressure off yourself. You have to invest in yourself to progress. He said, so invest in yourself. Go to the airport. Look at the plane. If that's as far as you get, it's further than you were 6 years ago.
Great.
He's sometimes. And he said, just invest in yourself, but you don't have to get on the plane. Like, nobody's got a gun to your head. Just do what you want to do. I said, okay, you're right. So I booked it. As soon as I pressed book on it, I was like, I can do this. I don't think I can do this. Don't think I can do this. And kind of spent that whole night not able to sleep and really, really, really anxious about it. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was really anxious about what I committed myself to. I decided to take my sister with me, my big sister, and so she was like, yeah, I'll come with you. So we then had a kind of Zoom call on the Thursday night, which somebody that I used to work with was also on the call. And I was really quite taken aback because this person has got like a permanent year-round tan where they're always on holiday, always on flights, but was obviously doing it terrified. So it was nice to see her. It was nice to see a familiar face. And then they answered a lot of questions. There was just so many questions about the kind of noise that you hear, just kind of trying to understand like why planes are so noisy. Like when you go out to them, why are they so noisy? And just understanding that that's actually fans cooling the brakes down, or it's the air conditioning from the plane. Like just understanding what all of that is. There was a lot of advice in the group for people experiencing stimulation, like noise cancelling headphones to wear them. Just different tips and hints for if you do find this stuff overstimulating, things that you can do to kind of help yourself. I think by this point, by the time I'd done the course, all the course did was confirm everything that you had said or that I had learned on the internet. So really the only thing that the course changed for me that I didn't know was the whoop whoop noise. I learned in that course that was the autopilot. That was a moment when they said it, I was like, are you joking me? Are you joking me? I thought I was dying. This is the autopilot going off. I actually was like on my own watching it, talking out loud, like, are you kidding me on?
Did it make you laugh or did it make you angry?
Oh no, I laughed at myself at the fact that I'd convinced myself that this something absolutely horrific was happening, and it was just the autopilot. 21 years of thinking it was something more. It just shows you how wild your mind can be. And then so we got to a very, very, yet another wet, raining day on the 21st of April. And so the night before it, so I'm going to start from the night before it because I think that's quite important. So my levels of anticipatory anxiety were very, very, very high. And I had to spend a lot of time challenging my thoughts. I had to spend a lot of time steering my brain away from, you know, wanting to imagine the plane falling out the sky, everybody screaming, oxygen mask dropping down, all of that. I had to steer my brain away from that. I had to really, really work hard at saying, this is difficult, but this is not dangerous. There is no danger here. These bad things are not going to happen. What is going to happen is going to be me laughing, smiling with my sister on this plane, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to do it because it's safe. Because there's more chance of me getting kicked to death by a donkey than there is dying on this flight. There's more chance of me having not enough sleep tonight and crashing the car on the way to the airport than there is dying on this flight tomorrow. So we're not going there. And every time my brain tried to go there, I had to pull myself back and say, we're not doing it. And if I don't sleep, my lack of sleep is not going to impact my ability to cope. And ultimately, if I don't want to get on, I don't need to get on. You know, this is just an experience. It's just an experience. If I want to do it, I'll do it. If I don't want to do it, I won't do it. But if I don't do it, it won't be because it's not safe. It's because I just can't cope with the feelings that are coming up inside of me. But it's not because and you have to develop that core belief that these people are very, very highly trained. These machines are probably the safest machines that you will ever travel in. And actually, flying's pretty boring. So because it's so boring, your brain wants to make it more exciting by turning it into like some movie in your head. But it's just a boring couple of hours where you can't really do much. So your brain wants to make it something more. So we drive in a very, very wet journey to the airport. My sister pointed out that years ago when we were flying to Africa when I lived in Ghana, she said, do you remember when we crashed in the taxi on the way to the airport at this bit in the road? And I was like, yeah, but never ever have I had any issues in a flight because there's no problems in a plane. But the taxi on the way to the airport when we were younger, we crashed in that. But nothing bad's ever happened on a plane. So we got to the airport, we checked in, we went through security. Everybody was really nice. I have to say, like, these fear of flying courses, they're a wee step away from probably what flying on a commercial flight will be like, because everybody's very supportive, very lovely. Really, the EasyJet staff really go out their way to kind of just talk you through things and show you things, and the airport staff were really lovely. Like the chap at security was like, so who's scared of flying? I said, oh, it's me. And he's like, oh, you're going to have a great day today, and my mum was scared of flying but she did it, and blah blah blah. So everyone was just really nice. I took somebody with me in the form of my sister who has a great sense of humour and a really kind of positive approach to things. So when we got airside, she said, I'm going to take you around a little tour of the airport. I know you've been for a tour of the airport, but I'm going to take you on my tour of the airport because there's some specific places that you need to be aware of. So this is Wetherspoons, and if you travel with me, we'll go to Wetherspoons for wine. So she was just really lovely at kind of keeping it all really light and fun and lovely. And she also said, if you get off, just so you know, I won't be getting off. She's like, because I've come here to get on this plane today, so I'm going up. So if you get off, I'm not getting off because I'm not missing out and going up on this. So she was fab. And interestingly, she's scared because she's had a similar experience, but she refuses to give into it. She refuses to give into that learned experience, whereas I did. So then we went down to where the flight was being prepared. And again, it was all about trying to keep that mindset in a positive place. And somebody came along with the person that I knew from work. Somebody came with her, and we bumped into them, and the person I knew from work said, how are you? How are you feeling? I said, I'm fine, I'm okay. And the person that was with her said, what is it that scares you about flying? And I said, I'm really sorry. I don't want to talk about that right now. I'll tell you when we get off, but I don't want to talk about that right now. And she was like, oh, I don't even know why I asked that. I'm really sorry. So yeah,
Well
so
done. I mean, that was great. You did that there and then. Brilliant.
yeah, because people and you see it even in the Facebook chat, people naturally kind of want to talk about I skip past them now, like the kind of negative things. Oh, I seen this about Boeing in the news. I seen, and I understand why people want to do that, but it's just feeding it.
Exactly.
Talking about it's just feeding it. There's no need to talk about these things. It changes nothing. So try and keep your mind away from even trying to control things by trying to understand that stuff, because there's no need to, the pilot that gets on the plane that's got 2 lovely children and a lovely wife and a great life isn't going to risk his life on that Boeing flight to Orlando because he thinks that something's going on behind his back that he doesn't know about. Trust the man that he does his job, and he also doesn't want to die. That's kind of where I am with it anyway, and I just think there's no point anymore in if I see things in the news, like I think sometimes I'll allow myself a little guilty pleasure of reading the Daily Mail, and there was something all screaming on the front of it yesterday about Boeing, and I just skip past it. There's just no point in reading this stuff anymore. It has no value other than it feeds into fear, and people want to read it, to understand it. It's entertainment. Anyway, so we get to waiting for the plane to leave, and I stand and I watch a Ryanair flight getting ready to go. So we're on basically tarmac level of where we're waiting for the flight, and I stand and watch this Ryanair flight, and it's chucking it down. It's a horrible morning in Glasgow, and out comes the pilot. He's got the high-vis vest on, and he goes round that plane, and he looks at everything. He looks at the engines, he looks at the wheels, he looks at the wings. He's underneath, he's checking. In the chucking rain, he's taking as much time as possible. He's getting wet, but he's not speeding it up. He's just doing his job, and he's checking that plane. And he continues to check it as they start to board people on the flight. So I watch these, and this is just a kind of an aside, but I'll say it anyway. So I watch all these people getting on the plane, and I said to my sister, oh, look, there's like an orchestra getting on this plane. I said, they've all got like cello bags and things, and they're getting on this flight. She said, so there is. I said, oh, look at him with his Andre Rieu hoodie. And then she said, oh, wait a minute. Andre Rieu, he was playing in Glasgow last night. And then all of a sudden appears Andre Rieu getting onto his Ryanair flight back to London. And the ground staff, there was a lady there who was maybe about 10 years older than me, who was absolutely, beside herself with joy that she was getting to see Andre Rieu, and she got to say hello to him. And the colleagues that she was working with all came over and grown men came over and gave her a big hug, and she was just so happy that she got to see Andre Rieu. And I thought, what a lovely team they are, first of all. And they're out there and they're chucking it down rain, and they're finding joy, and they're getting to meet Andre Rieu, and they're doing their job, and everybody's working. But I don't know, it was just a nice moment of seeing like this kind of, these people working on a horrible wet Sunday in Glasgow, but still just finding joy in their job, and obviously really just a lovely supportive team together doing it. So that was nice. So then they said, right, it's our turn, everybody, we're actually going to get away early, so let's get everybody on the plane. And so even then I was fine. It was weird. It was like I was like calm on one level, but I had a load of adrenaline going on as well. So it was back to those two bits of the brain that says, 21 years you've told me this is terrifying. 21 years you've told me this is terrifying. It's like, yes, we know new things now. We're okay. Everything is cool. And no, we're fine. We're fine. There's nothing to fear here. But no, we're okay. So it was just that kind of thing going on. But there was definitely just a baseline of calm. We got on the plane, and I sat down, and the woman beside me started to say, I can't do this, I don't think I can do this. Oh. And I said to my sister, let's move. And we just moved seats, because I knew my brain would want to listen and would want to feed into this stuff, which is what I'm talking about you just need to avoid it. Just avoid that negativity. So I just moved and let her just have her moment. Somebody then got off. And then the chap who was running the course, he stood up and he said, right, everybody, thanks very much for coming today. We're just doing the last few checks on the plane. And as we do that, I'm going to start to talk to you about my experience of panic attacks. And I was like, no, you're not. We're not talking about that just now. But he very quickly talked about how he had experienced probably a similar thing to me, and then had come out of that and now frequently flies and has a great time. And how we were actually with people that understood panic attacks. So if that did occur for anybody on the plane, they had the ability to kind of support them through that experience. And then he said, so now we're just going to close the doors. And that was a moment where I kind of gave in to the side of my brain that wanted to tell me it wasn't safe. And I said to my sister, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. And her thing is she doesn't like any attention drawn to anything. And so she was very kind of forthright and went, you need to calm down. I was like, I know, but I don't think I can do this. And she was like, you need to calm down. I was like, okay. And she just wasn't taking any nonsense from me. And so that slight wobble, they then shut the doors and off we went. And we took off.
To hire?
I know. I'll rent her and my husband out. So she was then able to. We then took off. Sorry, one moment. Sorry, small child. We then taxied round, and all the time, you've got the pilot in talking about what to expect. I already knew all of this because Jamie had talked me through many flights to Salzburg. So I didn't even need to listen to this pilot on the plane because I knew everything that was about to happen. I knew when they first powered up the engines, they were looking to see that everything was fine with the engines. It was like a bit of a burn off just to make sure everything was working okay. And then as we start to speed up, they'll be checking that. And then we get to, is it V2? And that's when they're committed. And then we do rotate. And the guy's saying all this, but I knew it all. And then that was us, and we just took off. And it felt like a dream. It felt like a dream, but it also felt like a moment where my life, the life that I wanted, had returned. And we took off and we went up into the air, and everything I expected happened the way I expected it to happen. I was anxious about the height. I couldn't look for a little while. I couldn't look out. My sister was right at the window. She had her nose pressed up at the window, having a great old look. I sat at the aisle seat just because I just couldn't quite take that level. I think it's probably a level of stimulation of the height and the movement and everything. It was just a bit too much for me. Yeah. But I did look eventually when I was ready. And then from there, one of the things that was bothering me before we took off, when I went, I don't think I can do this, he had said, it's just a short 40-minute flight. And I thought, I can't do this for 40 minutes. And then we took off. And by the time we were up there, and they said, just take your seatbelts off, move around. The staff are lovely, like the EasyJet staff, because they don't have to work anymore. They've just done like a up and down to Belfast, serving people and running about. And they go on this like flight with all of us, and they just need to stand and just chat to you. So they were so lovely. Like even in the air steward who was chatting to us, he said he actually took the job because he was scared of flying. Is not scared of flying at all now, but had taken the job because of that. So it's a really nice chat with everybody, and then they took everybody's photographs, and we all had like our cards up that said congratulations, you've done the course. And before I knew it, we were coming back into land, and I could look out, no problem, watch it all, and then it was over in the blink of an eye, and we came back out into a freezing cold, raining Glasgow that my sister was absolutely raging about. She wanted to be in Corfu, and I can't wait now to get on another plane, and I can't believe that the person that couldn't leave their house because they were scared of the clouds is now desperate to get back up into those clouds and do another flight. So 28th of June, I will fly again.
28th of June, right? Okay, we want pictures, we want stuff in the Facebook group. There's that the Lovefly Facebook group. Is that all right? Is that too much?
Oh, absolutely, and yeah, and I think it's quite a poignant flight because when I stopped going anywhere was on a train to London, and I will return to London on this flight. So yeah, 21 years later, and I have no fear about it. That side of my brain will be anxious, and I'll expect to be anxious, and that's the difference. I won't try and push it away. You know, there's none of this I can't be anxious stuff. I can't feel like this. It's like, I am going to feel like this. I am going to feel anxious because I've told myself for 21 years that is a scary thing to do. So it's going to take a while for me to not be anxious at all. I might always be anxious again. It doesn't mean that because I'm anxious I'm in any danger.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Julia,
sorry.
Some brilliant stuff there. I mean, there's a whole story. I've loved it. I've enjoyed the humour as well. That's why I just let the story run. I thought it was great. When people are listening, you know, there's obviously been loads of tips along the way as you've gone through it. But I just wondered if you were to sort of pull it together for like, basically do this, don't do that, or your top tips would be, apart from hiring your sister and your husband.
But I think that is surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with positive people. And even when you're in the Facebook group, migrate to the positive people. Don't fixate on the negative stuff. If somebody says, I've got a 2-hour flight and I can't do it, don't be like, I'm the same, neither can I. You know, we're all in this horrible place together. Don't fixate on that. Come away from that. My tips for you, for anybody who's not flown or is going to fly, is you will experience anticipatory anxiety before you get on the plane. At some point you will experience it. That might be the night before, it might be the hour before, it might be 10 minutes before. Expect that to appear, expect it to happen. But remember, when it does appear, it's not a signal of danger. It's just you are safe, and everything that's happening around you is safe. It's just your brain is trying to protect you because it thinks that there's danger. So just remember that. Find the thing that you are frightened of and really learn about it. Don't just be at the mercy of the fear of your thoughts. Really learn about what it is around flying that you're scared of. For me, it was, how does a plane stay in the air? For other people, it's taking off, it's landing. Really learn about that. Go away and learn as much as you can about that information and really educate yourself on your fear. Learn about panic attacks. Learn about understanding, because I think that's at the root of a lot of people's fear of flying, is that not being able to, as I said, deal with your emotions. So go away and put yourself in situations that trigger fear for you. Out with flying. There may be other situations, there will be, that nobody that's scared of flying isn't scared of something else. So if that's a roller coaster, if that's a height, something, find that and go and put yourself in those situations. Out with being in a plane, just go and put yourself in situations that make you fearful, and stay in those situations and watch the wave of fear ebb and flow, and stay there until you no longer feel scared. And the more you learn about controlling that fear, the more empowered you'll become when you find yourself in a plane for 4 or 5 hours and you feel that a moment of panic might come on. You will then be in a position where you can say, this doesn't feel good, but nothing bad is going to happen and it will pass. So learn about that. Any other tips? I don't know. I think that's quite a few.
Yeah, that's been great ones there. I just love the fact that your whole journey of, you know, not even being able to leave the house to taking a flight, looking forward to your next one. I mean, just the stuff that you've done to get to where you are, it's just remarkable.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself, you know, and I think that's another thing is, it's not easy to be proud of yourself, and you know, it's not easy to say I've done something really great here, but I think it's about really celebrating achievements that you do overcome fears that are so life limiting, and the fear of flying is incredibly life limiting. And I was never getting on a plane. I was never flying again. It was never happening. Even when I got my passport, I was going by train to Paris eventually. I was never, ever, ever flying again. And now I realise that flying is safe. Very, very safe. It's an amazing experience that we can have as humans, that we can go up in the air, and we can go to many, many places in the world, which will be my next step. But we can do all of those things. We're very privileged, but what we're most privileged of is the people that have dedicated their lives to understanding flying, or repairing planes, or working on the ground to make sure you get off safely, or scanning your bottle of water in Marks and Spencer's to make sure it's safe. Like, it's an amazing experience because of that. I don't understand how EasyJet can do the flight so cheaply, given all of the level of work that goes into keeping us safe and up in the air. And the next time you're in a car or on a train, just have a think to yourself, did you ask whether the driver had enough sleep the night before, whether he's got any convictions on his licence, whether the car you're in or the train you're on has had full checks that day to make sure that it's safe to drive in? I bet you don't. And I bet they haven't either. But you can be sure that the Ryanair man flying Henri Roux down to London got out in the rain and checked every single bit of that plane before people got on to fly. So trust the process.
Brilliant. Love that. I mean, at any point I could have said thank you very much, but you just then keep giving some more gifts.
Sorry.
It's really good. And I think there's lots of, I just love, there's so much sort of wisdom packed into what you said, and the determination that you've had to not give your daughter the experience that, not to rob her of doing what you wanted to do and what she wanted to do. I think that was a very powerful driver, but you've done so much, and there's been so many great, and I love the telling the tale. That was just brilliant. And Jamie will be pleased to know that his videos that help. You don't always know what the pickup is, because he's put some of these things out, and he said, you can only, if somebody views it, you don't know how many times they look at it, whether it's helpful to them, so that he'll be really pleased to hear that.
Oh, I must have watched that about 50 times, the Salzburg one. The one where he takes off and the shadow of the plane is being hit by the sun, and you can see it just getting smaller and smaller. Must have watched it. I watched it the night before in my bed. Yeah, amazing. And he talks through it so calmly. He's brilliant. Yeah. So I mean, I think I could talk and talk, but I'll end it by saying a huge thank you to you, to the Lovefly community, to people like Jamie for just taking the time to really, share knowledge, share wisdom, and just all the work that you guys have done, your book, just all of it has just been, I just wish it'd been around 21 years ago.
Oh, wow. Well, we were running Fear of Flying then. I was running the Virgin one then, but obviously the internet wasn't what it is now, so you couldn't. It's not as easy to find stuff,
Exactly. And I did a Fear of Flying course. I think around about 2003, I did one, and I never got on the plane. I didn't go on the plane because I couldn't learn the way that they were teaching on, that big group setting in a hotel. I couldn't hold focus on something like that for as long as I could, so I couldn't learn the stuff. So by the time I got on the plane, I was just doing it through sheer grit and determination, which failed. So yeah, knowledge is everything. So thank you for giving us that knowledge.
You've been amazing. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad to have met you, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us and share your story. It's just packed full of great stuff. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I hope I've not talked too much.
Not at all. No, it's been great. It's really good. I really just enjoyed listening. It's been great.
Oh, good. I'm glad I had something to say.